So today I'm going to do the second part of my video series on inorganic versus organic spaceships. So I started this series on when I asked the research question, is there science fiction around the world? Do different countries have different science fiction stories? And I found out to my delight that each country does have its own science fiction stories. And I also found out that some science fiction stories use inorganic spaceships while others use organic spaceships. And so I also learned that in my previous video, I talked about how African-American Octavia Butler used organic spaceships in her work, Xenogenesis, a series wherein the Oankali aliens rescued the human survivors of a nuclear explosion on Earth to interbreed with the surviving humans, and that they used their organic spaceships as a power dynamic over the humans. And so that the spaceship and the Oankali were one and the same, in which the Oankali could stick their tentacles into the spaceship and then become one with the spaceship. And so that Butler's work represents African-American science fiction. In other words, it's American science fiction with African themes, which emphasize the interconnectedness of humans with nature. In today's video, I'm going to focus on African science fiction in Nnedi Oforator's Binti series. And so today's video will focus on African science fiction as opposed to African-American science fiction. African-American science fiction dealt with the themes of social injustice and cultural identity of African Americans. But today's video is going to focus on African science fiction and about Africa in the future. And so I found this totally, fascinating, because there are so few science fiction stories that deal with Africa in the future in outer space. So that was a lot of fun for me to read. And the favorite part of the book for me was reading about an intergalactic university where aliens of all kinds and of all diverse nature could all go to the same university together. Now in Starfleet Academy, you also had aliens from all around the galaxy going to school together. But in UMSA, that's the name of Binti's school, UMSA University, you not only had humanoid aliens from all around the galaxy, but you also had insectoid aliens, aliens who were non-human, also went to UMSA U. And so what I did was I used AI again to illustrate what would an intergalactic university with non-human aliens look like. And what would Binti's organic spaceships look like? Because unlike Butler's stories, where Lilith was held hostage and prisoner inside an alien spaceship, and the aliens were the masters and like the plantation owners, and Lilith was like the slave, in Binti is the owner of the spaceship, just like Captain Kirk was the ruler and owner of the Enterprise. And so there's no power dynamic. There's no issues of slavery in Binti. Instead, it's just the sheer joy of space travel. I love the part in Binti where Binti actually becomes the spaceship. But that's a long story. So it's worth reading this novel to see how so it would be almost as if Star Trek was rewritten with African themes. And I sure do wish that more African writers or more writers would write from an African or Asian point of view. So I'm talking to you authors, so the diverse authors out there, so that there is a market for Asian Star Trek or an African Star Trek, where the headquarters of Starfleet would be somewhere in Africa, or the headquarters of Starfleet would be somewhere in Asia. So if there were a TV series or books like that, I would be the first one to line myself up to to buy it. Not that there's anything wrong with Star Trek. I love Star Trek. That's why I'm wearing the uniform, right? Anyway, so I'm making this video series to encourage my students to read, because the more you read, the better your vocabulary gets, and then the better your writing becomes. So today's video is going to be about African science fiction and the use of organic science, the use of organic spaceships in the Binti series. So the use of organic spaceships in Binti. So that's going to be today's topic. So without further ado, I'm going to now go to my notes and share screen. And so here is the AI where Binti is flying through outer space. Now you're probably wondering why she has tentacles in her hair. Well, that's a whole nother story about merging with the aliens. Okay, so everything in this story is about merging with something else in order to become one with something else, in order to truly understand what something else is like. Of course, that makes absolutely no sense if you've not read the book. So here you have Binti becoming the spaceship and flying through outer space, and she feels the freedom of having the outer space touch her skin and being able to see outer space with her own eyes without having to be stuck inside a capsule of a spaceship. So that is another favorite part of the Binti book. So let's talk more about African science fiction and Africa in the future and in space travel. African science fiction incorporates cultural references, symbols, and imagery that are specific to African traditions, folklore, and belief systems. It draws upon African cosmologies, spiritual practices, and mythologies, integrating them into the narratives to explore African cultural identity, African spiritual dimensions, and African social structures. In the science fiction novella Binti by Nnedi Oforator, Ortiz plays a significant role as a symbol of cultural heritage and identity. Ortiz is a mixture of red clay and oils used by the Himba people of Namibia, sorry if I mispronounce everything, to adorn their hair and skin. Binti uses this Ortiz on her skin and hair to feel connected to her home world when she is at Umza University. The Ortiz makes her hair and skin red, and Ortiz is used to clean skin and hair because in modern day, real life Namibia, water is scarce. In the story, Binti, the main character, is a young Himba woman who leaves her community to attend this prestigious Umza University on another planet. As she embarks on this treacherous journey across outer space, she takes with her a container of Ortiz, which she uses to maintain her connection to her cultural roots and heritage. And even when she is on the foreign planet where Umza University is located, she makes Ortiz from the soil of that foreign planet to maintain her ties to her homeland. But the Umza soil does not have the same resonance as her native land. So here is Himba women covered in Ortiz, red soil from Himba land. So in the science fiction novel Binti by Nnedi Oforator, Ortiz plays a significant role as a symbol of cultural heritage and identity. Ortiz is a mixture of red clay and oils used by the Himba people to adorn their skin and hair. In the story, a young Himba woman leaves her community to attend the prestigious Umza University on another planet. As she embarks on this journey, she takes with her a container of Ortiz, which she uses to maintain her connection to her cultural roots and heritage. The symbolism of Ortiz is multi-layered. It represents cultural identity. It represents self-acceptance. So Binti struggles with feelings of insecurity and alienation as she enters a new environment which is different from everyone else. Ortiz becomes a source of comfort and confidence for her. It helps embrace her uniqueness and accepts herself as she is, empowering her to navigate the challenges she faces. Ojit acts as a bridge between Binti's old life and her new life at the university. It is a tangible link to her past, providing her with a sense of continuity and grounding amidst the unfamiliarity of her surroundings. It also becomes a conversation starter, allowing her to share her culture and educate others about the Himba people. As Binti goes through her journey, she undergoes personal growth and transformation. So Ojit symbolizes this transformative process as it evolves and changes throughout the story. It reflects Binti's ability to adapt to new circumstances while retaining her core identity. And so this Ojit in Binti represents the importance of cultural heritage, self-acceptance, bridging different worlds, and personal transformation in a changing world. So African science fiction explores the questions of identity, including the complex intersections of African identities both within the continent and in the diaspora. It may examine themes of cultural hybridity, migration, and the negotiation of multiple identities, addressing the experiences of Africans living outside their countries of origin. And so in African science fiction is rooted in cultural and the literary traditions of the African continent. It draws inspiration, that is, African science fiction draws inspiration from African history, mythology, and cultural perspectives. And African science fiction often reflects the experiences, challenges, and aspirations of African societies, exploring themes such as colonialism, post-colonialism, identity, and cultural heritage. African science fiction often incorporates themes specific to African cultures. It may focus on communal values of spirituality, mythology, and traditional beliefs and relationships between humans and nature. It explores the intersection of African traditions with futuristic or speculative elements, showcasing diverse African voices and perspectives. African science fiction is influenced by the social and historical context of the African continent, which includes colonization, decolonization, and the challenges faced by post-colonial nations. It often engages with issues such as cultural preservation, political upheaval, and the impact of globalization on African societies. African science fiction often takes place within the context of Africa, providing unique perspectives on technological advancements, society changes, and speculative futures within the African context. So here is what Lagos might look like in the 24th century based on Bing. And so African science fiction draws upon the rich and cultural background of the African continent, incorporating elements from various African societies. African cultures have strong tradition of oral storytelling, where myths, legend, and folklore are passed down through generations. African science fiction often reflects this tradition by incorporating narrative techniques and storytelling styles rooted in oral traditions of Africa. It embraces the power of storytelling to convey cultural values, transmit knowledge, and explore societal images. African futurism is a literary movement which is associated which combines elements of science fiction, fantasy, African mythology to envision alternative futures that center on African and African experiences. It explores themes of technology, identity, and social justice within an African context, challenging Western narratives and reimagining African futures. African science fiction frequently engages with the legacy of colonialism and the process of decolonization. It addresses the impact of colonial rule on African societies, the struggle for independence, and the complexity of post-colonial identities. African science fiction often explores the social, cultural, and political transformation that occur in the aftermath of colonialism, providing a platform for critical reflection of African future. And African science fiction draws upon the rich African mythology, spiritual and traditional beliefs, intertwining them with futuristic or speculative elements. By exploring cultural heritage and traditions, African science fiction celebrates the diversity and resilience of African cultures, challenging stereotypes and offering new perspectives. African science fiction often serves as a platform for social and political commentary, addressing contemporary issues within African societies. It tackles themes such as inequality, corruption, social justice, gender dynamics, and the relationship between technology and development. African science fiction writers use the genre to critique existing power structures, raise awareness, and imagine different futures that reflect African perspectives. And so African science fiction provides a unique platform for storytelling, cultural preservation, and social critique. It offers a space for African voices, narratives, and imaginings of the future, challenging the Western stereotypes of Western science fiction. And African science fiction incorporates elements from African mythology and folklore. It draws inspiration from diverse mythological traditions across the continent, including gods, spirits, and legendary creatures. These mythological elements are reimagined and integrated into African science fiction. Africa is a continent of incredible cultural diversity, with numerous ethnic groups, languages, and traditions. African science fiction reflects this diversity by exploring different cultural perspectives, belief systems, and societal structures. It showcases the multiplicity of African identities, challenging monolithic portrayals of the continent and emphasizing the richness and complexity of African culture. So here you have the many different African cultures, and each color represents a different culture in Africa. Oral history. The griot tradition, prevalent in many African cultures, involves oral historians and oral storytellers who preserve and transmit historical and cultural knowledge. African science fiction often incorporates the spirit of griot tradition, weaving together past, present, and future narratives. It explores the interplay between history and speculative futures, providing a unique perspective on the relationship between African heritage and visions of progress. African science fiction frequently emphasizes humanity's relationship with the natural world and the environment. African cultures often have a deep connection to nature and sustainable practices. African science fiction reflects this ecological consciousness and explores themes of environmental preservation, ecological balance, and the consequences of human actions on the natural world. It also examines topics such as kinship, communal living, rites of passage, gender roles, and governance systems. By engaging with these aspects, African science fiction provides a nuanced understanding of African social dynamics and challenges Eurocentric perspectives. And so in order to understand more about African science fiction and the use of organic spaceships, which is the topic of today's video, we're going to study Binti by Nnedi Oforator. In Binti, the organic spaceship is known as a living spaceship, or Idan. It is a living organism described as a large creature with tentacle-like appendages that serve as propulsion and manipulative tools. The Idan is covered in a shiny, smooth, and iridescent skin, giving it an otherworldly appearance. The Idan The ship can alter its shape and size, adapting to different environments and accommodating the need of its passengers. The interior of the ship is described as organic and symbiotic, with walls that pulsate and breathe. I used these exact words from the book and put these words into the text Bing and got this picture of a Binti spaceship. Binti is a science fiction novella that tells the story of Binti, a teenage girl from the Himba ethnic group who leaves her home planet to study mathematics at the prestigious Umza University. Along the way, Binti faces challenges and dangers from different cultures and species, and on the way discovers her own identity and destiny. Binti runs away from her family and boards a shuttle to the launch port where she will join other Umza University students on a living spaceship. She is the only Himba on board and feels out of place among the Kush majority. Kush is another African tribe. She also carries a mysterious device, also called an Adan, which she found in the desert when she was a child. On the spaceship, Binti befriends some of her future classmates who share her passion for math and science. She also develops a crush on a boy named Hiru. She learns to communicate with the ship through her astrolab, a device that contains her mathematical knowledge and personal history. And so it is Binti's family who invented this 24th century cell phone that all aliens across the galaxy use. And so the main alien in Binti are jellyfish-looking aliens called the Meduse. In the science fiction novella Binti by Nnedi Oforator, the Meduse are an alien race that's encountered by the protagonist. The Meduse are a jellyfish-like extraterrestrial species. They are described as having a central mass resembling a large jellyfish shell, which is translucent and glows with vibrant colors. Hanging from this central mass are numerous long tentacle-like appendages that trail behind them. The tentacles of Meduse are covered in luminescent stinging cells, reminiscent of the pneumocysts found in Earth's jellyfish. These stinging cells can deliver powerful electric shocks and are capable of injecting a deadly venom into their victims. The Meduse use these tentacles for locomotion and manipulation of objects in their environment. In terms of size, Meduse can vary, with some being small and others reaching several meters in length. Their bodies are flexible and fluid, allowing them to move gracefully through water and air alike. In fact, the Meduse in Binti float through the air as if they are swimming in water when they interact with Binti on Earth or on other planets. The Binti are deeply proud and honor-bound species. They have a complex hierarchical society with leaders known as Azalua. They communicate through a form of telepathy using pulsating light patterns emitted from their bodies. In Binti, the Meduse are depicted as a formidable and fearsome race known for their hostility toward the Kush tribe. They have a deep-seated animosity toward the human race due to historical and acts of violence committed against them, in particular the Kush tribe, who are depicted in the Binti novel as an African tribe who look down on the Himba tribe and who regard the Himba tribe as backwards and primitive because the Himba tribe is thoroughly sedentary and rooted to their land, and while the Kush are more spacefaring, outward-looking tribe. The Kush and the Meduse have an ancient animosity dating back eons, and nobody even remembers why they are at war anymore because the war is so ancient. However, throughout this story, Binti forms a unique bond with a Meduse named Akwu, challenging the preconceived notions of both species and working toward understanding and reconciliation. As Binti is traveling to her Umza University, she travels upon a spaceship known as the Third Fish Organic Spaceship. Her ship is attacked by the Meduse that has a long-standing feud with Umza Uni. The Meduse slaughters everybody on the ship except for Binti because Binti is protected by her Idan. The Idan allows her to communicate with the Meduse leader Okwu, who reveals that they are seeking revenge for the theft of their chief's stinger by a professor at Umza University. So Binti convinces Okwu to spare her life and let her negotiate with Umza Uni on their behalf. So in other words, what happens is that while Binti is traveling on her spaceship to go to her university, and the Meduse attack the spaceship and they kill everybody on board except for Binti. And then the reason why the Meduse is attacking the spaceship is that long ago the professor at Umza U stole something from the Meduse, stole the stinger from the chief. And so now the stinger from the chief is sitting in an ancient museum at the university, and then the Meduse want their stinger back. This is very similar to when Europeans went to Africa or Egypt and stole a lot of stuff from the pyramids. And today, in post-colonial Egypt, the Egyptians want their stuff back. And there's still a lot of Egyptian stuff, archaeological finds in European museums. And so the Egyptians want all their stuff back because it belongs, the archaeological stuff belongs to the pyramids of Egypt. So here you see the topic of colonialism and post-colonialism, which is specific to Africa, inserted inside an African science fiction story, using science fiction as a metaphor or allegory. So Binti says, well, don't worry, I will get your... Binti says to the Meduse, don't worry, if you keep me alive, I'll go to Umza University, I'll negotiate with them and bring back the stinger to your people, and I will make sure that there's peace between humans and Meduse once and for all. And of course, at first, the Meduse, they don't believe her. They go, you're only a human. How can you understand what we feel? So what the Meduse does is, against Binti's will, they inject Binti with their genes. And then all of Binti's hair turns into tentacles. And so in that moment in time, against her will, Binti becomes half Meduse, and then she becomes half human. And so that for the rest of her life, she looks like the Meduse with the tentacles in the hair. And only then would the Meduse believe that she may have a chance to represent them on their behalf to get the stinger back. And so once the ship saved so Binti convinces Okwu to spare her life and let her negotiate with Umza Uni on their behalf. She also discovers that the Medusa DNA, and then once she has the Medusa DNA in her blood, then she's able to communicate telepathically with Okwu, and only then is she able to truly understand the other, in other words, the aliens. And so in Binti's world, if you're going to negotiate with aliens, you become the aliens. Can you imagine if Starfleet, in order to negotiate with hundreds of species, they have to become the species? So once the ship saved Binti's life, by the end of the book, that's a different story. Okay, so then Binti, eventually Binti brokers peace between the Meduse, the Kush, and the humans. But then as Binti is successful in negotiating peace between the two species on Earth, because later on in the book, after she returns the stinger back to the chief, then she and Okwu go back to Earth, where Okwu then serves as an ambassador of peace. And then Binti goes back to the Kush and with Okwu, and then she tries to make peace between the two. And as she's giving the speech, she gets attacked, and then the poison enters Binti's body, and she dies. So midway through the book, she dies, and then here you have the spaceship. Remember, I told you that the Meduse spaceships, the spaceships they all look like fish. It's called the third fish. And so the organic spaceship third fish gave birth to another spaceship. And so it's that baby fish, the baby spaceship, that they place the dead corpse of Binti inside that spaceship. And this is my favorite part, where the spaceship resurrects Binti. And because the spaceship is a baby spaceship, she has the energy to revive Binti. Okay? And then after the spaceship saves Binti's life, for the rest of her life, Binti has to have that spaceship flying next to her as her lifeline. So that this represents the symbiosis and the interconnectedness between man, technology. In other words, you become your spaceship. You have a symbiotic relationship with your spaceship. And just like in the previous novel, where the aliens can stick their tentacles right into the root of the spaceship and become one with the spaceship, in the Binti story, literally she and the spaceship are one. And so once the ship saved Binti's life, by the end of the book, Binti has to be near the ship at all times to use this ship's life force to stay alive. And so she becomes symbiotically linked to her ship for the rest of her life. So wherever she walks, her ship floats next to her, showing the symbiosis of man, nature, and technology. And what's great about UMSA University is there are many students just like her who walk around with spaceships linked to them. So at UMSA U, she finally finds a place where she belongs. So at UMSA U, there are many students who have flying spaceships flying next to them, as they too are symbiotically linked to their spaceships. I love it that UMSA U is such a diverse, intergalactic school that has non-humans as space aliens. So here's a picture of Binti with her tentacles, in which when she merged with the Meduse in order to do the negotiations, the Meduse then injected her by force with their genes, thereby changing all of her hair into tentacles. And then she now has the baby fish, a spaceship that has to fly with her everywhere she walks when she's on campus in order for her to stay alive. So this represents the the symbiosis between man and technology, and it also represents the symbiosis between alien and man. So when Binti found out that the only way for her to stay alive was to have an organic spaceship near her at all times, Binti worried how she would fit in with other students, since UMSA U is such a diverse university with aliens from all over the universe, including non-human aliens. Her student advisor reassured her, "Don't worry, you'll fit right in, because there are plenty of other students who have the same symbiosis." And so I stuck these pictures. I put in the words, she has tentacles in her hair, she's symbiotically, in other words, I put the words of the novel into the AI, Bing AI, and it came up with these pictures. And now these pictures are not in the book, but I created this just for this presentation so that you can see what I mean by this symbiosis between man, technology, and nature. And here the other students also need their spaceships hanging near them. And so when Binti saw other students also had spaceships near them, she finally knew she found a place where she belonged. And she knew she would be a happy student at Binti University. Here's a picture of all the other students walking along with their spaceships in tow. So in Star Trek, humans and aliens have diplomatic ties and sign treaties or agreements with each other for different species to join the Federation, where they all share common ideas, just like diverse Americans. But in Binti's world, to have ties with aliens, which is the case with the Meduse, Binti the human African had to merge her African DNA with the alien Meduse to become the alien, which is why her braids became tentacles, making her half human and half Meduse. And once Binti became half human and half Meduse, then she had to contend with thinking, am I human or am I Medusa? Because when she went back home and she had these tentacles, her family looked at her and said, oh my goodness, what are you? And then she felt so out of place because she started to wonder, am I human or am I Medusa? And so within the book, she had to find her own cultural identity in which she is a combination of both Medusa and human. And so that's part of her personal journey within the book. And so in the Star Trek universe, Captain Kirk would have to merge his DNA with all the different alien species to fully understand what the other species are like, which is what the Oankali did to the humans in order to get Lilith to understand what it's like to be Oankali, when the Oankali in the previous novel merged its DNA with humans. So Binti arrives at Umzayu, where she is greeted by professors and students. She meets the master harmonizer who helps her heal from her trauma and adjust to her new appearance. She also meets the professor who stole the stinger, who apologizes for his actions and agrees to return it to the Medusa. And so when I put in the description of what the Medusa would look like, this is what Bing came out with, what the Medusa would look like. And then here I put in intergalactic, non-human, aliens, intergalactic university, and this is what Bing came up with. So it's very, it looks like a university with a lot of locusts, but it's meant to be non-human aliens. So Bing mediates a peaceful resolution between Medusa and Umzayu, earning their respect and gratitude. In other words, earning the respect of the Medusa. She decides to stay at Umzayu as a student and an ambassador for both the Himba and the Medusa. She also accepts Akwu as her friend and roommate. She realizes that she has changed a lot since leaving her home, but she still loves her family and hopes to see them again someday. So Binti's organic spaceship is a symbol. So this is the organic spaceship. This is the Medusa organic spaceship. Notice how the Medusa organic spaceship looks just like the Medusa, so that there's a symbiosis between everything. And so Binti's organic spaceship is a symbol of her connection to different cultures and species, as well as her own identity and destiny. The spaceship is a living creature that she boards to travel to Umzayu, a prestigious intergalactic university. The spaceship is described as having a smooth, leathery skin and a large, round mouth that opens to let the passengers in. The spaceship is also able to communicate with Binti through her astrolabe, a device that contains her mathematical knowledge and personal history. The spaceship is friendly and curious and helps Binti survive the attack by the Medusa. The spaceship also has a symbiotic relationship with the Medusa, who uses its tentacles as weapons and shields. So this is a Medusa spaceship as imagined by Bing. And so the organic spaceship represents Binti's journey of discovery and transformation. It shows her the wonders and dangers of the universe and exposes her to different ways of thinking and living. It helps her bridge the gap between Medusa and Umzayu as she uses her astrolabe to translate their different languages and negotiate a peaceful resolution. The spaceship also reflects Binti's change in appearance and identity as she becomes more like the Medusa after they inject her with their DNA. Her braids turn into tentacles, which the Medusa call Owakua, and symbolize her connection to them. Binti's organic spaceship is an important part of her story, and it connects her to different cultures and species. And so in this novella, the protagonist hails from the Himba group, and the Himba culture places strong emphasis on their connection to the natural world. And the Himba have a profound understanding of the land, plants, and animals, and they can incorporate nature into their everyday lives. And so Binti's organic spaceship, known as the third known as the third fish, reflects this cultural perspective. The ship is alive, covered in small creatures called Idan, and has a symbiotic relationship with Binti. The ship not only provides transportation, but also acts as a spiritual and cultural vessel, embodying the Himba's connection to nature. Through the organic spaceship, Binti maintains her cultural identity and carries her heritage into the wider universe. So here I put in third fish, and Bing came out with literally a fish traveling through outer space. The Himba people have a profound connection to the natural world and draw inspiration from their surroundings. Binti's organic spaceship reflects this connection, as it is not a cold metallic structure, but a living entity intertwined with nature. Through the third fish, Binti experiences the harmony and interconnectedness of the universe, mirroring the Himba's belief in the interplay between humans, nature, and the cosmos. By incorporating the organic spaceship, Okorafor emphasizes the importance of cultural identity, connection to nature, and the symbiotic relationship between humans and their environment. The third fish becomes a powerful symbol in Binti's journey, representing the Himba's cultural perspective and acting as a conduit for her personal growth. And so here, the spaceship showcases the integration of cultural values, spirituality, and the interconnectedness of life in the narrative. It serves as a representation of the Himba cultural perspective and adds a unique and enriching layer to the story's exploration of identity and human connection to nature. The third fish is depicted as a living entity, and so it's not merely a vessel for transportation, but it also can talk to Binti. It can also sense her feelings. It's curious about Binti's well-being, and it creates a symbiotic relationship with Binti, which emphasizes the interdependence of different forms of life. And so here you have another depiction of what this fish-like spaceship would look like. And so here, the third fish serves more than a means of transportation, but acts as a spiritual and cultural vessel for Binti, embodying her connection to her heritage. And it brings with her traditions, values, and spiritual beliefs of her culture. The ship becomes a physical representation of her roots, allowing her to maintain a sense of self and carrying her heritage into the wider universe. And so the organic spaceship holds great significance, reflecting the perspective of her people. And so here in African culture, you have this symbiosis of the natural world and technology, in which the spaceships are actually like people, presenting them as living vessels that emphasize the interconnectedness of all living things. These spaceships, being alive, intertwined with nature, symbolize the African cultural value of harmonious coexistence with the environment. They reinforce the idea that humans are not separate from nature, but are an integral part of it. And so this is rooted in African cultural perspectives and draws from the Himba's connection to nature. On the other hand, Octavia Butler's organic spaceships was used as a tool of powerful domination by the Oankali over the humans, whereas in Binti, the human and the spaceship become one, and Binti actually becomes the spaceship. And so the spaceship is the one that gives Binti her life force and eventually saves her life, and she becomes the spaceship herself. And Binti could feel herself literally flying through outer space. And there is a complete fusion between technology, nature, and self, which shows the complete interconnectedness of person, nature, and shows a deep respect for nature and space. And here you have Binti flying through outer space, and so that she and her ship have this symbiotic connection and provides transportation as well as spiritual and cultural and life force. And so here you have, so by showcasing such symbiosis, African-inspired science fiction emphasizes the concept of cooperation and mutual reliance. It reflects African cultural notions of community, collectivism, and interconnectedness. These narratives explore the idea that individuals, communities, and even species thrive when they work together and rely on each other's strengths. The organic spaceships serve as a metaphorical representation of this interconnectedness, emphasizing the importance of collaboration and unity for the betterment of all. So here are some more pictures of how a symbiosis of person, space, and nature. And so overall, the themes of connection found in African-inspired science fiction featuring organic spaceships highlight the cultural values in Africa rooted in harmony with the environment and a recognition of the interconnectedness of all. And so here you have people living inside their spaceships, and by featuring spaceships that have symbiotic connections with their users, these narratives highlight the concept of cooperation and mutual reliance. And so this ends my second part of the second part of this video about how African science fiction uses organic spaceships in order to signal the interconnectedness of man, nature, and outer space and the universe. So if you have any questions about this video, you can always email me. You can always email me anytime.